magic mountain, above the troubles far below. Somewhere off in the distance, I let it go, I let it go. Once upon a dream I stumbled in a nightmare of my own. I raged against the rain and thunder. I didn't know, I didn't know to let it go, let it go. The only change in the universe happens deep inside. No matter how sweet or how adverse, just be satisfied, satisfied.
Speaking on Let It Go, extra the original, a visit about the soul Pacific for the lyrical peace in the deep silence. So I keep writing, my struggle and stress suppressed by my freestyling. From these islands, we live relaxed with patience. Let the rays in this place is straight amazing. So why you uptight? You got a rough life? Just let it go, man. You get only one try.
Today, Hawaii imports over 80% of its food. But in truth, that figure is closer to 95%, because the production of food that is grown here is almost entirely dependent upon imported fuel, fertilizer, chemicals. We are highly dependent upon a global distribution system that brings us our food and the means to grow food from faraway places. We are on tenuous life support, and climate change raises the stakes. This extreme dependency does not become obvious until an event strikes that interrupts the flow of goods in the global supply chain. We know such events are both natural and man-made.
Here's one of the papayas from our yard in the front, which I'll show you the tree actually in a little bit. Check it out! The avocados and the collard greens over here, they all come from the yard, right outside here. These are the aerial yams and then the lemons, Meyer lemons.
Prior to Western European contact, Hawaiians had abundant agricultural systems that were completely independent of imports. Homes and villages were surrounded by food forests that provided ample food within walking distance. This still remains true in many of our insular and territorial communities.
So beautiful. And some ginger and olena that we're going to use later. And this, you gotta look at this. This is a air yam, a dioscorea that grows in the trees. It's really cool. It's kind of like a potato.
We can learn from these traditional systems developed over countless generations. As Dr. Failau Tusi Abengalio, a traditional leader of Samoa, says, resilient communities are ones that learn from the past, design the lessons into the present, and pass them on to the future.
All right, here's our little papaya tree, and I just wanted to show it to you because in this garden there are so many different kinds of plants, and they're all growing really close together in this 10 by 25 plot, right outside the kitchen. And in a state of emergency, we would have food for about 4 days maybe, right here. And so the papaya is growing next to the taro, which looks really beautiful. You can see down there. There's sweet potatoes all next to it. And there's oregano and mints, and they're all growing very densely, which is keeping out a lot of other weeds. And they're actually feeding each other, like this pigeon pea back here. This one is actually like a mulch plant. It also produces food and beans, but we break off the branches every so often and put a little pile underneath the papaya, and that feeds the papaya plant.
Indigenous practitioners of agroforestry have a deep knowledge and capacity to relate to the natural world. This depth of knowledge is not found in our university systems. These are the true masters of relating to the natural world in a sustainable way. When the stakes are high, we need to play our best hand. We need that knowledge. Our urban living environments today produce very little food. In fact, some subdivisions in Hawaii prohibit growing fruit-bearing trees. A Western European relationship to the environment has become one of observer rather than active participant. We have become accustomed to landscapes that are grown for their ornamental value rather than for production of food, medicine, or other materials.
This is a curry bush that the leaves are used to flavor a whole bunch of different Indian curries usually. That's what my grandmother grew up feeding me, so I feel really connected to this plant. And back here is a kaffir lime bush that we're going to keep pretty small as well. There's green onions right here in these gutters and little seedlings here that we're starting up, and it's really nice to have them near the kitchen so we can keep an eye on them and keep them watered. Papaya seedlings and pigeon pea seedlings, and we've got some rosemary here, another pigeon pea, some Jamaican mint, this bush right back here that's leaning against the kalamungai tree that we're keeping really small. There's ava in the back there, and ferns on the ground, oregano, tea leaf, aloe, olena under the ground. You can't really see it right now, but probably in the next month the new shoots will be coming up.
Ornamental landscapes frequently cost tens of thousands of dollars to install, hundreds of thousands to maintain. When we think of growing food in an urban environment, we often think of vegetable beds. Temperate vegetable crops demand high inputs of labor, water, and fertilizer. While they may be productive, most people don't have the time to maintain a vegetable garden. Climate change might suggest we're looking at a paradigm shift from a temperate model of annual garden beds to a tropical model which is based on perennial food plants. Perennials have a lifespan of at least 2 years, usually many decades. There are numerous tropical fruit, nut, leaf vegetable, and starch plants that can grow for many years at far less cost than ornamental landscape plants. Many have the added advantage of tolerating weather extremes. We learned some interesting lessons about localized food supply during the 2009 tsunami disaster in Samoa.
A lot of our Asian farmers, they're bringing a lot of vegetables, a lot of cabbages, beans, and things like that to the stores. The local markets, roadside stands, they've gotten a lot bigger than they were before.
As in Tutuila, we found agroforesters, farmers, and permaculturalists taking advantage of the natural landscape and their homegrown food forests to feed the population during the first critical 96 hours. It should be obvious, the greater the local and regional food capacity, the lower the burden on emergency services will be. Homegrown food forests create capacity to feed families and communities independent of the risks to commercial food production and distribution systems. An area as small as 1/10 of an acre can produce a significant source of food with moderate maintenance requirements once established. This creates baseline self-sufficiency in times of need as well as for everyday subsistence. Food forests are as individual as the people who cultivate them. A traditional Polynesian home garden contains dozens of fruit, nuts, starch, spice, medicinal, and culturally significant plants. Perennial leaf vegetables and culinary herbs can be maintained as shrubs and hedges, and some are quite attractive. Many of these perennial plants can produce for 20 years or longer, with a small fraction of the labor required to grow temperate vegetables.
I just wanted to reiterate that this is a 10 by 25 foot plot and that every single family dwelling in Honolulu could have something just like this. This little section has a lot of endemic plants. There's the la'i, the ava, the hau back there. There's a little ohia tree that's waiting to go in the ground, and the uala and the olena right here in the corner. There's endemic ferns behind me, and if you look closely, you'll see that this looks like a forest floor. It might look like chaos to the untrained eye, but this is actually a collaboration between humans and what naturally occurs in the forest.